Guys, my name is Lauren Boone. Welcome back to my channel for NOI Education Services. And this week we are continuing on with literacy, but this week we're going to be specifically focusing on some strategies, some apps, some websites, and some resources that you guys can access in order to be able to better support your students' literacy rates. And this is basically the aim of this is that where you are dealing with learners who have got less than functional literacy, if you don't know what that means, you can always go back and check out the last video that we did. But talking about getting students from basic literacy to functional literacy. And basically what that does is that's going to get them up to like an AQF3 level so that students are able to operate effectively and a little bit more autonomously in a work environment, okay, which is a large proportion of what sort of vet does. So what I wanted to do in this one is I wanted to kind of split it up and firstly think about what we're doing from a curriculum design perspective, because from a curriculum design perspective, as we are taking students through training, okay, the training process is for building competency, skills, and knowledge, okay? Now, that will account for foundational skills for reading, writing, things like that, as much as it's going to be for unit-specific skills, okay? So there are, in my opinion, okay, there's no issue with starting your training materials, creating training materials that operate at a lower language literacy and numeracy level and building them throughout the unit of competency, okay? And you might do that for every single unit. You're going to, or you might do it for like the first 10 units of a 20-unit qualification. You might do that for the foundational units, like pretty much every qualification nowadays has got a safety unit, it's got a communications unit, it's got a planning and organization unit, it's got a work effectively, that. So you might do it for those particular units, and that provides a really nice little solid foundation for learners, where you're taking them from, you're including that functional, you're taking them from that basic literacy to that functional literacy through that period, in line with also building, obviously some specific workplace skills and knowledge as well, okay? So it's really important to think about design when we're thinking about where our students are coming from and where we want them to get to. And I think that one of the big failures of off-the-shelf materials in particular is that they become very, very formulaic. They take a unit of competency and we go, here's element one, here's element one, here's PC 1.1, here's, 2 or 3 paragraphs on that particular point, okay? There's a whole range of issues with this approach to designing training materials. One, GPT has made it super, super easy to just mass produce that sort of crap. And I'm going to call it crap because it's crap. Two, while sometimes the units of competency are built in such a way that you would obviously do, like in hospitality, you do the planning, and then you get your equipment ready, and then you cook the recipe, and then you present the recipe, and then you plate it, and then you clean up afterwards. And that's how the performance criteria are written. That's not necessarily how you're going to teach the skill to the learners, okay? So I think what happens with the vast majority of materials that get written in that style, you're not actually thinking about the learner and you're not actually thinking about the training process that needs to go through. So quite often there's a chunk of underpinning knowledge that needs to be addressed. And this is quite often where the underpinning knowledge doesn't actually fit into the skills part. And so what you actually need to do is you need to lay that foundational knowledge. And so certainly when we're designing learning materials, we focus very heavily on the knowledge content, because that's all of the underpinning stuff that we actually need to train students on before they get to the part of doing the task, okay? So there's all this underpinning content that you need to think about, and then there's the task itself. And then sometimes if you're dealing with units that have got the same repetitive content in them over and over, from a legislation, a work health and safety, a workplace policy, that sort of thing, which we see in a lot of units, sometimes you can put that at the end. If you've already addressed that well and truly up front, chuck that shit at the end, right? It's going to be an instant turn off for learners from an engagement perspective. So there needs to be a conscious design process that happens. And part of that thought process can be, how am I taking learners from basic literacy to functional literacy by the end of this unit? Okay. So we want to make sure that we can use really plain, simple language. We can use shorter sentences. I referenced a style guide back in the last episode. Again, if you didn't see it, you can go back and watch it, but it's stylemanual.gov.au. More importantly, I know you guys are all going to be using, like GPT or Bard or Grok or whatever, okay? And that's absolutely fine. Me and all my team use it as well. However, like, please actually have a design process and please think very carefully about the prompts that you're using, okay? I spend probably the first 15 to 20 minutes of every chat after I've been through my own design process. So I'll design a unit of competency, I'll design the assessment, or I'll design the learner guide, okay? And the first 15 minutes of my chat are making sure that the bot has an understanding of who the learner cohort is, what the qualification is in context of, what the job role is in context of, what the location of the delivery is, really setting up everything so that we're writing at an appropriate level for that learner, okay? So that that learner is actually going to be quite quickly able to engage in the content. Because if the content is too academic, in the first couple of minutes, they are going to turn off from it, okay? It's just inevitable. And I mean, obviously, sometimes this is going to be outside of your control. I mean, if you're working with an RTO, if you've got an RTO that wants you to develop a diploma or an advanced diploma for students, for job seekers or for international students that are coming in, and yes, they might have an IELTS, but like we all know how easy it is to buy IELTS, so that's not necessarily a very good indicator. I think that's where it becomes really problematic. So like there are going to be times when you're going to be asked to design something knowing that the group is really going to struggle. And I have written diploma and advanced diploma materials where I've had to like start very simple and like the first 10, 20 pages of the content, like the first 10 to 20 slides of the content, lays out some really, really basic context and then tries to build the students up from there. It can be really, really challenging depending on what you're building and who you're building for, but there needs to be that conscious process in part from designers to understand. And also I think just to recognize that, again, the majority of us that do design content do operate at a very high literacy level, and therefore we forget what we don't know and we write far too academically. It's something that I constantly have to pull myself up on. It's something I'm constantly pulling my team up on. It's a very regular topic of discussion when we're writing AQF 8, AQF 3, AQF 4, AQF 5 materials as to like what's appropriate in terms of like questions and lengths and everything like that. And so from that training material perspective, we've just got to keep that in mind. And obviously, we also want to keep it in mind because if we do aim it too high, students are very quick to look for the quick fix, and the quick fix is going to be ChatGPT, right? Like students know it. That's what they're using. It's a massive authenticity issue that we're dealing with, and we're going to continue to deal with it. I'm going to continue to talk about strategies, and it's going to be a cat and mouse game. That's going to happen for the next, 100 years. So like that kind of is what it is. But there needs to be that very clear thought and design process. And then you need to spend the time building the prompts in so that when you're creating content, you're creating it at an appropriate AQF level, and you are ideally building from basic literacy up through functional literacy over the course of the learning guide. Okay. Now, when it comes to trainers, I think there's two really important points that we need to address. So one, you guys understand that your students do have language literacy and numeracy issues. But often one of the biggest challenges that we have is in how to address language literacy and numeracy issues with students, how to broach that topic when we can see that there are comprehension issues. Okay. Now, obviously, every trainer is going to have different strategies for how we go about relating to our students. It's going to depend on your students. It's going to depend on who you are. It's going to depend on your level of experience. But I'm talking to trainers who are seeing lots of this and don't know how to broach the topic with their students. Okay. So there's two ways that you can go about this. One is talking about it from a broad perspective. Talking about it from a very generic perspective. And I like to take this from an industry perspective when I'm starting out in these courses. So when I'm introducing myself to my new cohort, when I'm talking about a new course, when I'm coming into my first unit, I will explain to students that almost every industry has its own language. Okay. So I'll say, look, I come from an academic background, I come from RTO background, and that word RTO means registered training organization, and here's what that means. But this is an example of like the language that I use all the time. Okay. In the same way that when I talk about my language of hospitality or my language of childcare or my business language, like the language of business or the language of this, there's going to be acronyms that I use all the time that I don't even think about that you guys don't understand. And you've got to pull me up on that. There's going to be terminology. There's going to be specific words that we use that mean something to me, that means something to people in my industry, but they might not mean something to you. So I talk to students about the need to effectively learn a new language to participate in this industry. Okay. When I say that, I can then bring literacy into the discussion and I can go, sometimes learning a new language or learning a new industry language can be really, really challenging. And so it can help us to go back to like some basic literacy skills here. There's a couple of strategies that I'm going to put in place, guys. First of all, there's no stupid questions in my classroom. If I use a term and you don't know what that term means, you're not the only person thinking about it. It's because I'm so used to using that term that you guys need to call me on that and you guys need to raise it with me and go, hey, what does that industry term mean? Okay, you're not asking what a word means, you're asking what does that industry term mean, and then I can explain that industry term or that acronym to you guys, okay? So make it a whole of class activity that you're learning a new language together, and so therefore going back to learn, like, and through that, we're learning basic languages as well, okay? Where we've got individual students that we can see are really struggling from a comprehension perspective, okay, we want to give them strategies as well. And obviously, we ideally want to get all students and all adults and people in Australia up to a functional literacy level, okay? There are a huge range of programs that are available in order to be able to do that. So I will put a list of them below, but like, for example, Read Right Now is a West Australian program that offers it's completely free one-on-one tutoring for adults to improve their reading, writing, math, and study skills. Okay. So we can give them that as a resource. Encircle's Adult Literacy and Numeracy program provides free tutoring to adults seeking to enhance their literacy and numeracy abilities. They've got a range of locations. They've got personalized support. You've got the Community Adult Literacy Foundation, CAF, which is an organisation dedicated to assisting adult Australians struggling with reading and writing by connecting them with appropriate resources and support, potentially in their area. Literacy for Life Foundation is an Aboriginal-run charity that trains individuals to deliver, so it actually trains individuals to deliver literacy training to different populations, okay? So, if you're looking at, doing some volunteer work and stuff like that, that's definitely an area where, you can go to access some free resources as a trainer, okay? If you're doing a lot of work with, with remote communities and things like that, the Literacy for Life Foundation can obviously help to hone your skills in that particular way. The Reading Writing Hotline is a national service that provides referrals to adult literacy and numeracy programs across Australia. It's got a range of free training, free online training that's part of that as well. And it does it in like a pretty cool way. Like, so, you know, when you actually go onto the site, they've got like a whole resources page, which has got like workbooks to print, but it contextualizes it around really simple things. So like garage sales, going to the doctor, books and babies, books and bubs, being on the road, you know, trucks, tips on spelling workbooks, tips on how to engage in academic reading. And that's a really good one for people who are like starting to enter back into the academic sector, particularly people that haven't done well in school. It can be quite a terrifying and, you know, confrontational environment. And so giving them like tips on how to engage more with academic reading can be really, really helpful. So I will put all of those links in below. As I said, there's just a huge amount of resources for adults who want to learn how to read. Broaching the topic can be one of the most challenging aspects, but if we broach it from the perspective of like, hey, we need to learn this industry language together, and then we can have more delicate conversations one-on-one with students and go, look, comprehension is going to be comprehension is going to be key to you being really, really successful in this particular job and turning that job into a career. Okay. And then having that lead to like more financial independence, building your wealth, building your, you know, having a better ability to be able to provide for yourself and your family. Okay. And that's a universal that everybody wants, that everybody can tie into. And vocational education and training is very much uniquely suited to be able to do that. So if you don't know how to access these resources, as I said, like I'll put all of the links below. You can ask questions below. If you're a trainer and you're really struggling with this, if you're a curriculum designer and you're really struggling with this, like this is very much a passion project of mine. By all means, reach out. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Lauren Boone on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me via email, lauren@anawire.org. You can contact our operation, which is laura@anawire.org, and she'll book in a quick session with you so that I can link you into some more or answer any questions that you have. You know, as I said, this is going to very much continue to be an issue, guys, over the next couple of years. It's certainly not going away. So really, really do recommend that it's something that you get familiar with, that you have strategies on how to broach, and that you start to consider it when you're doing your task design, your training design, your curriculum design, your assessment design. I hope you guys have found this helpful. If you've got any questions, by all means, put them below. If you disagree, by all means do so. Feel free to duke it out, but do so respectfully. We encourage healthy debate on this channel. I hope you guys found this helpful. My name is Lauren Boone for Anawire Education Services, and I hope you guys have an amazing day.